And that's what Psyrin is all about. It's about detecting psychosis earlier, more objectively and rapidly without the need for a clinician. And it's a really important work because right now it takes more than 9 years for a diagnosis of bipolar disorder to be made in the UK. And once you have an episode of psychosis and it recurs, you can lose your job, you can lose touch with your family. Psychosis is something that we can detect earlier or even predict, hopefully, in the future. And then we can save people from all of that trauma in their life.
Hi, everyone. Abdur here again. And today we have Edwin, Raheem, and Julianna, all co-founders of Psyrin. And Psyrin is something that I came across when we first had a chat couple of, maybe almost a year ago with Edwin. It was not Psyrin yet. And we are really excited to get to know about their story, how it came about, and where we expected to go with Psyrin. So Edwin, Raheem, as well as Julianna, all students from King's College London. And yeah, let's jump into it. Really excited to get to know more about the journey y'all have, Edwin. And maybe to start off, let's do a quick round of introduction. So Edwin, do you want to give a really quick start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Edwin. Like Abdur said, I'm a student at King. I'm doing my PhD right now, close to completion pretty soon. My background is all over the place in Korea, Malaysia, Macau, moved to Singapore, and now I'm here in London. But really, my one true love at this point is Psyrin. It's been like this for about a year now, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But I look forward to talking to you guys.
Yeah, super stuff, Edwin. Juliana, do you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Julianna. My background is in psychology, and I'm originally from Hungary. And I'm doing a PhD at King's, also close to completion, and I'm working on Psyrin from the beginning with that.
Yeah, lovely there, Juliana. And how about you, Raheem? You want to go next?
Sure, thanks. I'm Raheem. I'm a final year medical student at King's. Unfortunately, I don't have as international background as the other two, but I'm proud to be here in London and at King's studying for my medical degree.
Super stuff, Raheem. I think something that I really, when I was doing my research before this as well, something that I really found particularly interesting was that mixes in background as well as other general interests. So really looking forward to getting into those details to understand how this mesh of, expertise, interests really brought about Psyrin as well. So before we really jump into anything, maybe just give us a heads up. How did y'all really? Yes, y'all are from Kings, but on the same note, like, how do y'all find each other and find that that passion towards Psyrin, or what eventually became Psyrin?
Yeah,
anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start it up.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Edwin.
No, just because I think each of us will probably have a little bit of a different sort of story background why in terms of entrepreneurship. I know certainly, like Julie, seasoned founder at this stage. Raheem, I think relatively new to the scene when he joined Psyrin, but I've seen him go from strength to strength. And myself, I was a bit lost. But I mean, I can start off framing it by talking about the Psyrin story, if that makes sense, Abdur. Yeah?
Yeah, by all means, Edwin. Go
right. So in terms of the Psyrin story, it started because I met Julie at a party in December 2021. So this was a party of Entrepreneur First. We had to organize something as a student partner there. And one of my colleagues brought along Julianna because they were in some societies together and they were both Hungarians, they were mates. We met at the party. She happened to be in the same building. So within a couple of weeks, we met up by the building, not by the building, but after the building to go for some dinner somewhere. And she just spoke about her passion for the space. I spoke about, how I was kind of floating around with entrepreneurship and trying to figure things out. And she's like, oh, look, there's this ideation competition at King's. It's called King's Idea Factory. I've been doing this for about five months now. Do you want to join me on this this journey and like pitch in a month? I was like, sure, why not? If you win a little bit of money, you can spend a little bit of money if you're traveling or something with that money. So we went through the process together. We won the competition, one of the 4 winners. I got a little bit of money. Of course, thank you. About a year late now, Abdur, but thank you. And then
Better
from
late than
there,
never, right?
amen to that, amen to that. But from there, we had to use the money for the company, so we decided to kind of pursue that. But very quickly after, there had been someone in the audience who was watching us. Not Raheem, but Raheem's friend. But Raheem's friend brought him along to a meetup with the two of us, and we were looking for a third co-founder with some sort of medical expertise to help give a balance to the team and take some of the workload off, because at that point especially we were all very part-time. Raheem was a great cultural fit, and that's how I see it. But I mean, you guys, you got any input there? Is that kind of more or less how you guys saw the process too?
Yeah.
Go on, Julie. Well, I was gonna say, just to follow on from that story, from my perspective, my friend had seen you guys pitch at Idea Factory and was like, wow, it's a really interesting project. She was quite interested. I was quite interested when she explained it to me when we were going out just for like drinks, actually. And she was just explaining this idea, this project that she'd seen and thought it would be really good. I've got a bit of a interest in psychiatry, got a medical background, and also got some coding in my background as well. And so it seemed like a really, really good fit. So she brought me along to sit down with these two lovely people, and it turned out that she didn't join, but I did, and it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, that's something that I found like really cool as well, because it's not always that any team is really able to get not just like basically three technical experts right at the beginning. So I think, like, at least from an outside perspective, that there itself is an asset for the team. And maybe at least, I don't know, maybe others, or at least, I don't know, in general, I think that's something really strong to start off with, because you all have the technical expertise built in the team already. So I think that itself is an amazing platform. And to that matter, I think some of the awards that you all have won has also speaks for it as well. I think there was essentially, there's a presentation prize as well as the Innovate UK Fast Start grant as well. So congratulations on that as well. So I think that itself, though it's still quite early days, I think that itself already speaks volumes. And before we dive into any of the further details of Psyrin, why you're doing it and all of that stuff, maybe on that note, maybe we can, also allow Julianna to share her views on, the entire inception of Psyrin, why you even felt that nudge to go pitch as well. And maybe even after that, I have a few other questions in terms of, that entrepreneurship itch that generally is prevalent in most of us, and how we could delve a bit more on that. So let's go into that, Julianna. Like, why go pitch an idea? Or did you have an idea at that stage, or was that developed subsequently?
So yeah, I was quite sure before I met Ed that I wanted to do a startup, and I was quite sure that I want to do medtech startup, and I was sure that I want to do mental health, and I was pretty sure about that I want to use NLP in that because it was related to my PhD, and I knew that I had two ideas, but I was more like I have ideas, but it's more important to find good co-founders, and then the idea can just form. And actually, this idea factory was just like, I was thinking it's a good structure for me to start something. And then the reason why I wanted to do a startup that stage is because I was really passionate about using technology in mental health and psychiatry, especially with this kind of big boost of AI everywhere. But I see that if it's, say, research, the impact will be really limited. But I think if you just make companies, make startups, do some entrepreneurship, the impact can be really real, and it can impact the patients and not just stay on paper. And that's something that I'm really aligned with. And then after this Idea Factory competition happened, then we were like a little bit more, committed to this idea, but we still wanted to test it. And I was myself quite surprised after this kind of market discovery that, wow, that's something actually is needed, and it's something that's really worth investing in. And I think it was kind of a little bit formulation, but I think the original idea did not change a lot. Of course, how to put it into the market and the best market entry is something that we still discuss. But yeah, and for my perspective, this idea of factory competition was a big milestone, because that was the point when I think we both got committed to, just do the company. And also when Raheem joined, it was like, wow, someone else is believing that, and I'm crazy enough to convince someone else. And that was a really good feeling. And that was also the time when we actually set up the biggest strengths of Psyrin in terms of like the culture and what we value and what's the aim of the company and what we do not do and what we want to achieve and what's the mission. And I think we are quite mission driven, and it was from that point it was quite clear for everyone. So this spring was really exciting.
Yeah, I think very well put there, Julianna, in terms of it's really good to hear, especially like, at a very early stage that you all are mission driven, because most companies that are built to last are very mission driven, like taking the Facebooks, like it's not output driven where they're looking to sell at the end or anything like that, but really it's driven by mission, and the mission is what draws the users, the customers and investors, and really shows that the companies they are for a longer run. So that's really lovely to hear as well. And on the same note, any of the three of y'all, like, again, we generally realize, like, with the changes in time, we've seen like how university is not just seen as a place just to come and learn and, have that amazing experience of 3 to 4 years or whatever. But now it's increasingly being seen as a place where people meet others who have similar interests. And as a result, things like startups, like meeting other interesting people and whatnot, is some of the end results of universities. So it's fairly uncommon, at least say, in some of the other universities across the world, be it in Harvard, Boston, Harvard, MIT, so on and so forth, where people come to universities to meet people, have their startups, spin it off, and drop out. So what are your thoughts about in terms of how the university ecosystems are changing with this, changes in thinking styles and patterns of our present generation? Maybe Edwin, do you want to give it a start?
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting question, and it's really hard to change. I mean, there is certainly prevailing trends across the world about moving towards certain things. But as you mentioned some examples in the United States, particularly where there's this mindset in place. I know certainly there are some schools that are reputed just for being a place where you meet other entrepreneurs, really. I don't think that is the case as of yet in the United Kingdom, nor is it the case in Singapore, where I'm also affiliated. But in both ecosystems, there is a real push for entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I
mean, so we can speak for King's, for example. I mean, King's, they set up the Entrepreneurship Institute in 2016, so relatively recently. But in the 7 years since, there's been an amazing trajectory of growth, I'd say. They've had a few companies go into YC, a few companies raise millions of funding cumulatively, and some companies are really having an impact in the market right now, right? And in Singapore, I think when I joined was the start of their NUS overseas college experience, where they send students across to Silicon Valley and Munich to look at companies and build companies as part of credits. But really, I mean, I guess there is a push from the ecosystem, but I think the bigger thing is, there's a push hopefully from this generation itself, really. We're all Gen Z in this talk right now at this stage. And I don't know, I haven't seen a generation so bullish on entrepreneurship.
Exactly. Right. I think that's something really nice to see, because I've myself seen several colleagues as well who've come to uni, started the company and then dropped out. It's just that in quote unquote degree is not the end output that they're really looking for, what they're valuing per se, but rather that experience who they could meet is what they're really looking for. And that what they become as a result of university is, at least to some people, relatively more important than what they can remember or what they quote unquote call themselves a specialist of at the end of the degree. So it's really interesting to see how that narrative is changing with time, where it's not come to university and get a job, but rather come to university and see what I can do with that information, with that knowledge that we're now equipped with, which could be a job, which could be entrepreneurship, which could be social service, which could be getting into NGOs, so on and so forth. So it's now really interesting to see how that paradox of and chain of thought has evolved with time.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I would say that, in my opinion, university has always been about that exploration. I mean, I think certainly in my upbringing, the prevailing thought was that university was meant to get you standing for a job. But really, I think at the fundamental core of it, it's always been about finding who you are and what you want, or trying to find who you are, what you want. And I mean, I think the States, for all its flaws, it's great in terms of allowing students and universities to really explore. You can undeclare a major. That's not a thing that's heard of in Asia, really, to go undeclared for a year and just explore. So, I mean, yes, while there's been a shift towards entrepreneurship, I would argue that generally that's been a thing as well, where you go to university to kind of find what you want to do. And certainly my academic journey has been about 6 years now of figuring out what I want to do before I met Julie, Raheem, and started Psyrin.
Yeah, I think that's really it's really thought-provoking, right? Just thinking about it, and even thinking about how it will evolve in the future as well, as we see more startups really coming. I think London's one of the biggest ecosystems for startups to really be there, and in terms of even one of the best places to be there for entrepreneurs, especially when getting companies off the ground from 0 to 1 as well. So, go ahead, Julianna.
So I think just on this note, I think it's also kind of important to mention that I think it's really great that this ecosystem is evolving and people from universities starting companies. But I think we should make a kind of note on the risk that it involves, that people who are already privileged enough to go to universities will be the people who shape our future. Because sometimes, when you start a company, it's more about how many people believe you and how many people you know, and who are the people you know, that actually about the value that you create is not, it's really just a bet. So you cannot really, of course, there is some kind of assessment of risk and whether you see the value in the idea, but mostly it's just about trust. And I think people who are coming from less privileged background may be more likely to design products and companies that serve people who are in less privileged background, but they get less and less opportunity. So I think universities are wonderful and great, but I think it's really important to also a little bit balance it with other infrastructures, programs, scholarship, whatsoever, that help people who are not able to go to unis, or for example, coming from less startup heavy ecosystem, like for example, like Asia itself is like not as great culture of startups as in the Silicon Valley, is to just do startups and raise their company and raise money, because I think it's just really big risk that we will end up people coming from really similar background, having really similar problems, doing products and doing solutions for people in the same social strata that they are coming from, instead of actually doing something that can really help everyone. Sorry if I know it's a little bit
no worries. I think
the narrative, but I think it's important to mention that universities are great, but I think it's also really important to encourage
100%. 100% there, Julian. I think you mentioned a very important point there. So I come from Sri Lanka, and the startup system is still in quite early days. Let's put it that way. So, and that point that you raised as well. So different cultures, different countries, they have different problems, and I think it's very important, like you very rightly put as well, that we have entrepreneurs not just centralized in certain parts of the world and only seeing certain problems, and they are as a result building certain solutions that only address the problems of the people that live in those regions. So I think it's equally, if not even more important, that entrepreneurs really take up these challenges, be it in underprivileged areas, be it in less like developing countries, so on and so forth, and really take one, I think, important point that you mentioned is that giving them the necessary resources and training that helps them see that they could use some of these skills in different ways rather than just having to jump into a job because for the lack of no other options. And two is they're being mentors around them to help them see problems in a different way. And I think we mentioned this right at the beginning as well. Having the technical knowledge is one thing, but being able to see the larger picture and to build a company out of that is an entirely different thing. And I think that vantage point is what is really important, especially when building a company, not just building a company, but taking anything like, say, from 0 to 1, because that first step is what is the hardest. And of course, not placing the other steps that come up after founding the company, not to say that they are no less hard or anything like that. But I think taking that first step is that leap of faith for any person, any company, regardless of where they are from. So I think that initial encouragement, be it funding, mentoring, would really make a difference, be it in any part of the world, because that would make that difference. Like I said as well, that to say that someone believes in them would make a big difference. So thank you for bringing that point as well, Julianna.
Welcome.
So something that I was also curious about, I think we lightly touched on this when Edwin was saying about how you all met in terms of this Entrepreneurship Fest event as well. And we touched on this when we were talking about the ecosystem as well. So maybe Raheem, you want to just touch on how this ecosystem really helps evolve, how it has helped Psyrin, number one, and how do you think it will see it pushing the company further, be it in London or elsewhere, and also this entire mental health space? How will the ecosystem help push the company and propel it to the next stage?
Yeah, so I mean, London is a really good place in terms of where it's situated in the UK and in Europe. I think we touched on comparing it to the States, and I think there's still some growth there versus the United States that can be done. But in terms of mental health, I think it's a really good space to be in. We've got the Royal College of Psychiatrists close by, and we've managed to create good links with them. So from a medical perspective, it's a fantastic place. We want to pitch competition there as well. In terms of networking, I think we're very lucky as well. At UCL and at KCL, there's a fantastic network of startups, entrepreneurs here, and accelerator programs. And I think it's hard to get that replicated anywhere else in the UK, let alone in the rest of Europe. So I think we're very lucky to have been placed at King's, but also to start our company here in London.
Yeah, I think that's something we really recognize. Like once we in a way step out of that environment, but I think, like you very rightly said, I think that amount of support that is in London is really it's something really special, and the amount of people that are there to help, especially within that ecosystem. So on that note, you would like to mention any, like, what type of support have you all received in that journey that you all have had so far?
I mean, we've received quite a lot of support from various institutions. I think we've all taken the lead on different programs. So I'll talk a little bit about King's 20, which is our accelerator program at King's that we're on, and that's been very good. We've been able to use the Entrepreneurship Institute at King's. Julie, for example, has done Conception X. I don't know if Julie wants to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can only praise it. It's a program designed for PhD students to make them venture scientists or starting their own company.
What is this again?
Conception X. It's a 5 years old program, I guess now, and it really fit align well with anyone's PhD. So if someone is listening to this and having a PhD and interested in entrepreneurship, then apply for them. I think they are really great. We had other supports. I think Edwin and Raheem can explain it better than I, but Conception X is, I'm here to advise them.
Yeah, lots of people to thank. I mean, I think when we started, a lot of these programs were essential to just kind of give us a big step into the ecosystem, right? So Raheem mentioned King's 20, Julie mentioned Conception X, both very key. I'll list off a few others. I'll also be here for hours, but we had Imagine If, so that's run by the Innovation Forum. We were part of that program. That was useful, especially at the beginning. We had UCL run a program at the Center for Digital Innovation with AWS. We were on their very first cohort of companies, and that really helped us in product development perspective. And in addition to that, as Raheem mentioned, we've got linked with RC Psych because we pitched for them. Very recently, last fall, we worked with Digital Health London. So Digital Health London is the culmination of a partnership between several institutions, including 2 academic health science networks here in London. So with direct links to the NHS, as well as CW Plus, and a couple other authorities really across London. But Digital Health London, one of the generator programs, this evidence generation bootcamp, and it fundamentally changed our perspective on how to work with the NHS. There's been some fantastic links. Even though the program's concluded now, we're still greatly in touch. In fact, I have a call with them just tomorrow. So, very grateful for their support.
The best. And to be fair, Edwin, I think just on this conversation, just this bit as well, I'm like fairly impressed just to understand like how much institutional support that you all have. Obviously, everything doesn't come out handed in the post, right? Obviously, you're likely would have made that initiative. So I think that itself speaks volumes in terms of how committed the team is in terms of really getting, not just building a product, but getting it out there as well, because these institutional links eventually translate, especially once the product is ready to go and whatnot. So I think congratulations, big kudos on that as well. And yeah, really looking forward to the subsequent steps and to see how these would eventually be translated, say potentially be linked to the NHS and whatnot. I think that would be amazing, because psychosis and other mental health things I think they should receive much more attention that they already have. Not saying that there's a fair amount of support there already, and there's good amount of work done already. Not undermining that, but I think there's a lot more that can be done as well. So it's really encouraging to see that those links being made by Psyrin and other companies at very early stages, because understanding the problem is the foundation to building the solution. And I think, on that note, really big kudos on that, Edwin.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, we got to give a shout out as well to Innovate UK. I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to them. I mean, they're a huge part of the ecosystem. We talk about ecosystem a lot. Innovate UK, as the innovation agency for the government, has been pivotal, I would say, to innovation. I mean, sometimes they get some flack, but for us, it's been very smooth. Everything's been facilitated very well. Their systems are fully operational. Our monitoring officer is great, and I mean, they really fund innovation. Without them, we wouldn't have what we have right now. They entirely funded our proof of concept. So they took a gamble on us, and now our data is looking pretty good. So we got a shot.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. And maybe I'll put all the relevant links in the description as well. So if you all found out that, do check them out. And like Edwin, very eloquently put here as well, do reach out for support, because folks, industries, people like friends, family would only be able to help if you're willing to put your hand up. So do put your hand up, and you'll be surprised by the amount of support that you would receive. So take that first step. I think that's something that we can take out of this discussion, I believe, Edwin.
Yeah, sure.
So that was, that bit surprised me, I'm not gonna lie. Like the amount of industrial support that you all have received and that initiatives that you all have taken, I think that's really amazing. So how about friends and family, Julianna? Like what was that reaction like? I'm curious.
I'm really happy that you not say friends and family and fools, so we missed on the of the free apps. I don't have rich parents, unfortunately, so it's not really a big like money wise. We were not supported in terms of so we not really have this kind of background that friends and family could fund us. Maybe it's also because we are quite young, to be fair. At the same time, I think just simply having friends in the ecosystem is really important because of the network. And by ecosystem, I mean also the ecosystem in the startup ecosystem. But also for me, it helps a lot that I know many people because of my PhD in the science. And I think also for maybe Raheem, his medical background, his mentors, the people that he knows can help a lot. So we didn't really get investment from this bit, but in terms of support, I think it's quite important. And also these are the people who really believe in us, and then they believe in what we are doing because they know us, and it's also psychologically really boosting. But they also connect us with others sometimes. So so they are the people who really hold us in the heart, and I think it can help and can be really reassuring, because at the beginning you you know, you really believe in your mission, but at the same time it can be a little bit scary because you feel like you are so far away from your goals. But when there are people who also, you know, just support you, it can help you to stay stable, stay committed, and just do things. I don't know, Raheem and Edwin, your perspective on friends and family and fools. Maybe I just mixed them.
The last bit is within brackets. I didn't say that. But let's not also forget, Juliana, the fact that like even how you mentioned that Raheem's friend was in the crowd, and that's how you all got introduced to Raheem as well. So I think, you know, that itself speaks volumes. They're all together. Yeah, sorry that I interrupted there. Raheem, you were saying something?
No, I was just going to just echo what Julie said. I think the medical links that I have been really, really useful, introducing us institutionally and otherwise. But equally, like you said, I was going to mention that my friend found Psyrin, although it wasn't called Psyrin at the time, and it was just an idea. From that moment onwards, you know, our stories were intertwined, if you like. So I think it's fantastic that London provides those opportunities to network, make friends, and explore the space. But equally, of course, the pre-existing connections that you have are super, super important as well.
Yeah, 100%, Edwin. And on that note, Edwin, like, what would you say, and how important would you say these networks are? Not just for startups per se, but in general. I know that, you know, we go way back in terms of, you know, this is a conversation that itself could be a separate, you know, hour-long conversation. Yeah. But in a nutshell, Edwin, how important do you think networking is, and how do you see it playing a role, not just for aspiring entrepreneurs and startups, but also established startups and established founders as well?
Yeah, I mean, I know networking as a term gets a lot of flack sometimes, but I mean, Abdur, you and I met over LinkedIn. I sent you a message, we got coffee, and then, you know, became friends, right? So, and to be fair, some of my best friends in London, I met through the guise of networking, you know? So yeah, I think in a nutshell, networking is absolutely crucial, irrespective of your industry, irrespective of your stage. I mean, in the end of the day, in whatever things you do, it's people. People are the ones who make decisions. People are the ones that suffer. People are the ones that provide solutions, right? So I think it's integral that you go about building a network from day one, really. I wish I started my network building earlier. In fact, my Singaporean network is not nearly as illustrious as what I have here, just because I didn't have that, you know, sentiment in my mind to go and do that at the time. So if there's a takeaway message from this podcast, in my opinion, it is to go and network. And when you do network, I mean, it's not necessarily transactional in nature. Networking can just be meeting people, learning their stories, and making friends. That's really what it is.
Having a coffee.
Exactly. I mean, I think it gets flagged because people think it's transactional, but really, I would say half of my friends here, like genuine good friends, people who I've slept on their couches because I was, you know, missing a home for a while, for example. These guys I met through networks. So it's rather than networking, I say you just got to build your group of people, make connections, connect. That's the big thing, you know?
Yeah, building that support system, I think at the end of the day, that support system is what really helps people get back to their feet on the days that they're down.
Exactly.
And that network, so like when you're on the ropes, that support system is what's going to put you back on in the ring. So I think 100% they're very well put there, Edwin. I think that's something that equals not just for, like you very well said, not just for founders, but anyone in general. Like, because we never know. And like, I think it's very important that you mentioned that, you know, it's not transactional. I think it's transformational, because it depends on how you really look at it. If you're looking for a transaction, that's what you'll get. But if you're looking for a transformation, you never know how the people that you've connected with, how the people you've met may help you down the line, and how you may be able to help them down the line as well. Sometimes it could be just another introduction. Sometimes it could be going out of the way to like find a football ticket. It could be anything, but at the end of the day, when we realize this, it's that network that helps bind our society together, and that's what also helps to uplift our society as a whole. Like to the next level as we progress. So I think that's really important, and it's really great that you'll all gave very different points to that as well. And I think together that makes an amazing answer in terms of the general outlook of why networking is important, and how it could really help as well. So something that I was also curious about was to understand now. Increasingly, we see a lot of students doing PhDs for the sake of doing PhDs. But now we're also seeing people doing PhDs, but not just looking at it in the end academia output, but rather looking to see how these what they learn, the technical skills that they learn, are translated into different ways. So that was something that I found particularly interesting, not just as a general university outlook, but also how that is changing with time. So generally speaking, what are some of the most important life experiences that y'all have had that helped y'all form in terms of Psyrin as it is now? It could be something, be it in your school days, it could be something while you're in the university, it could be something in your kindergarten, but in generally speaking, like, what important life experience that helped you form who you are today, that eventually helped you build up Psyrin as it is now? Maybe I'll start with Ryan. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. For Psyrin specifically, I think I've had experiences around psychosis and people who I care about having psychosis, people who I'm living with having psychosis, or even, in clinical placement, seeing the effects of psychosis on others. I think that really did.
Who not very acquainted with psychosis and what it is. Maybe if you could just paint that picture a little, I think that'll be great, right?
Yeah, of course. So psychosis is a break from reality. That's probably the best way to describe it. And so that's hallucinations. So seeing things or hearing things or feeling things that aren't there, and delusions. So believing things that aren't real unshakably. And so they usually go hand in hand, and those together make up what we call psychosis. And that's closely associated with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and a few other conditions. And that's what Psyrin is all about. It's about detecting psychosis earlier, more objectively and rapidly, without the need for a clinician. And it's a really important work because right now it takes more than 9 years for a diagnosis of bipolar disorder to be made in the UK. And once you have an episode of psychosis and it recurs, you can lose your job, you can lose touch with your family. It's really devastating. It can be really devastating. And what we're trying to do is really trying to change that from being a reactive thing where people are sort of having episodes of psychosis and then we're having to try and rebuild their lives, to a proactive thing where psychosis is something that we can detect earlier or even predict, hopefully, in the future. And then we can save people from all of that trauma in their life. And so I think for me, seeing that play out in my personal life and in my professional life has really driven me to Psyrin. And it means that we as a company are really, really, as Julie said, mission driven, and we really want to make a change.
Yeah, I think very, very cool there, Raheem. I think just understanding that there's a history behind why Psyrin is becoming Psyrin. I think that really, as in consumers and people who are on the other side of the fence, I think that is really reassuring, knowing that, I think I mentioned this earlier, not just knowing that the company is mission driven, but also the people behind it is mission driven as well. Yeah, so that's really amazing to hear. Right? You want to go next, Julie?
Personal experience is important for me too. So I've been close to people who had mental disorders, really severe ones, and I also been close to people who had psychotic disorders, and losing this relationship sometimes because of the burden of the disorder was really devastating for me, because they were quite important for me. And then when I come to the UK, in Hungary, in my former education, even though I was studying psychology, they thought that psychotic disorders like schizophrenia is something that happens and is devastating and you cannot do anything about it mostly. And when I came to the UK, I was to study mental health. I was specifically curious about psychosis, and this is why I chose King's, because psychosis is such a super good here. And I started doing my dissertation in that, and also studying about the approach here that people can prevent it, and that is early intervention was really shocking for me, because I believed before that, oh wow, before I believed that there is no way to prevent the disorder, and now I realized that wow, it can be prevented in itself. And that time I was working with neuroimaging, and by the end of my project I realized that neuroimaging is fantastic, but it's really not feasible to use neuroimaging to actually screen people or detect disorder early, because it's not enough money for that. So I wanted to work on something that's scalable and cheap, and I can imagine that even in my home country can be applied. And then my PhD project just popped up, which was like how to use speech and speech as a biomarker. And then it was an important experience to start working on that. Another interesting experience for me was that I realized that, wow, I could learn things that I didn't really know before that I could learn. And then wow, like coding is much easier than I expected. I can enjoy it much more than I expected. And just learning about a new field in itself can be something that I'm quite good at. I also realized that I'm quite good at learning quickly. Which I already know before, but that time it was quite obvious that it can be one of my USP. And at the same time, having some experiences with entrepreneurship before moved me thinking about like yeah, everything is great, but I see in academia, but I see myself as a little bit more pragmatic and more energetic than generally people here. And I was feeling that if I stay in academia, fighting for psychosis care and early psychosis care and preventative care would be a little bit a lone journey. And I knew that I was really good at knowing things, and I'm really mission driven, and I think I'm quite an inspiring person. But I think I realized also that I need someone who care more about the money and the financial aspect and can help me with communication. And then I think it was a big step in my life when I met Raheem and Dad, like both of them, because then was like, oh wow, these people can actually help me with this. So for me, I think these are the kind of experiences. And from entrepreneurship, I think it's something that you just develop as an identity step by step. So I didn't really see myself a year ago as someone who is an entrepreneur, and I still not feeling 100% confident using this label, but I know that the way I'm thinking is quite entrepreneurish, I guess, now. And also I think you just see yourself as a change maker, as someone who wants to make things happen. And then you realize that people who want to make things happen really often are entrepreneurs and start startups.
Yeah, I think I like that label as well, change maker.
Yes, this is more like this. And just you make change by actually convincing others to put money into your dreams and into the change that you find worth it to make, and you kind of invest your life and energy and everything into this change, and then you like convince others to invest the money into this. So I see myself someone like that, and maybe it's
I think that makes a lot of sense, because especially now, like everyone uses the tag of entrepreneur, and it's somewhat abused as well to some extent. So even the way like how we were talking about how the company is driven by the mission, how the founders are driven by a mission, and even how the fact that, how you all prefer to position yourselves. I think that it all ties together if you really look at it from an outsider perspective. It just feels different, especially in terms of I can't wait for this. I really can't wait to see, what sort of impact Psyrin is going to make, and really to see how this would be translated, not just in society, but also to see how it would reduce the burden on, like, especially in the clinic as well, because I can imagine, Raheem, that it's already quite a big problem altogether. And I think these are the types of solutions we need to solve the issues we have today.
Definitely.
Edwin, let's come back to you, Edwin. The same question in terms of, what were those previous life experiences that you had that has been instrumental in, helping to take Psyrin to where it is today and eventually taking it off the ground as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think across both Raheem and Juliana, we've had a lot of similar themes and answers that mold how Psyrin became to be. Clearly there is an underlying mission-driven aspect of all this. And while I don't think I've been as close up to psychosis as either of Raheem or Julie, certainly mental health has been a priority for a while now. I started my PhD in mental health just because, I mean, it is, for me, it's always, the most interesting thing about biology has always been about psychiatry and psychology. I want to understand it from a biological and physiological means, but I think fundamentally at the core, it's really that underlying almost psychophilosophy that interests me about how we perceive reality and, just live in the world and experience it. So I can't imagine anything more devastating than psychosis. And while it took Juliana bringing this to me for me to really explore the space, and then subsequently a bunch of market research, really. And when I say market research, I just mean conversations with the relevant people. There was almost a convincing in that process. So I guess a pivotal experience in terms of the Psyrin perspective is that market analysis, that market research, where we spoke with clinicians and service users to speak about their experiences with it. And I mean, through that process, I was more and more convinced about the scale of the problem and how underappreciated or underrated it is in the general public. I still think to this day, serious mental health is underrated versus the more popular depression and anxiety. I don't want to pit mental health against each other. It's all important. But I do think serious mental health does need more attention as a concept, and does definitely certainly has greater clinical burden, if you ask me. Now, in terms of like overall lived experiences that make Psyrin today on my end, I think the one takeaway I want to give is something that Julie touched on a little bit, but something I would expand on in terms of that self-belief. I've always been someone who is relatively assured in my ability. And yet, despite that confidence, I don't think until Psyrin, I fully believed that I could start a company now. I was thinking, okay, maybe that's something you do in 5 years, in 10 years. You get some experience first, work for a few startups, go consulting or something, and then you come back into it when you have some expertise. I understand why people feel that way, because I mean, I felt that way. But now having lived the experience of Psyrin, my takeaway is always just, you just got to go for it when you see something, self-belief is there to be had. You just have to dive into it and adapt, I suppose. So I guess the message I'm just trying to say is that the experience that molded this was the experience itself. Almost, it's molded me in terms of making me believe in who I am and in that founder identity. I don't think that answers the question directly, but hopefully that's a bit of a takeaway that people can benefit from.
Yeah, certainly there, Edwin. I think very well put there as well. There's a lot of different facets that we can take out, different nuggets that we can take out just from that little bit, and certainly hopefully a lot of others find that very useful as well. Yeah, Edwin, Raheem, as well as Julie.
I can add one bit if you not mind for that.
Yeah, go ahead by all means.
So for me, it was also an important experience, and maybe if someone who is doing science listening to this, was that I was a little bit doubtful that I can do. Like, I love research, I love science. This is why I started, and I find the quality of work really extremely important. So I was doubt that I cannot do good enough research if I just come out of academia, or if the quality will really drop and the innovativeness will really drop. And for me, like Conception X and also seeing other scientists thinking about doing a company helped a lot. And also my experience when I firstly started talking to another person who was doing a medtech company, and I just see the research, and then also doing the effectiveness of research there helped me to believe that, wow, no, I can do really good research even outside of academia. Of course, the topic is really limited in terms of now I will research psychosis and speech and severe mental disorders and speech in the next 5 years, but at the same time, the quality of research not have to drop. So you can do really, really valuable and really good science even outside of academia, I believe, at least. So if someone is maybe prevented because believe that you cannot, like, you somehow have to sacrifice the scientific quality. I think it's not true, and you can do it quite well. So for me it was also quite important, which let me commit to Psyrin. And on the self-belief is like, I think it's important to say that you not have to 100% believe in yourself. You just have to do what you if you think that if you believed in yourself, I would do that, then just do it. And it's not, the emotional thing will come later on.
Yeah. I think that's also very good to understand there, Julia, because especially I think the self-belief aspect of it, that initial resistance, let's face it, it's high. It's super high to take that first step. It's just like once we take that first step, I think that's when it we really understand actually this is much easier to get done after we actually get it started. Because I recall, like, even when I started the podcast, that first episode was the hardest episode, just starting.
Of course.
And but after you start, it's much easier than that first episode. That first hurdle is always the hardest. So I think we've touched a lot of ground in terms of Psyrin and where it is as we speak. So on that note, I think I would also like to pivot to one of the, like, maybe as we draw towards the end as well, in terms of to understand what could we expect next from Psyrin, and what's a dream for Psyrin? Anyone want any takers for this?
Typically, I take this just because I'm the one using the pitch the most. What's next for Psyrin? Abdur, do you mind if I speak a little bit about what's been for Psyrin as well, to frame what's next for Psyrin?
Go for it. By all means.
So what's been is validating the problem, one. I think we spoke about that at length. Number two, which touched upon this with Innovate UK, but we got a Fast Start grant that's helped us build out a proof of concept. It's a 6-month, really quick proof of concept. We use some innovative methods of online research tooling to get some results quick. And we should conclude the study at the end of next month. So we're analyzing the data as we speak right now.
Looking forward to that.
Amen. I mean, alongside that, we did receive a small amount of pre-seed investments. It wasn't an official round, but we did receive a small amount to help keep us going while we work on this. And we've onboarded some team members. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out the team members. We have Keshav, who is essentially an early joiner, basically almost a co-founder in my eyes. He has equity in the company, and he is our lead developer right now. He's built out an MVP for us on AWS that he's worked closely with Julianna and Raheem with. We've also got Ashwin. He's our new head of growth and partnerships. He onboarded about a month and a half ago, but already he's doing some amazing work, helping us get some data, especially in other countries outside the UK. And I mean, I've got to mention as well, Anjum. She's been helping out. She's a medical student. She's been helping out for a while now. And she's been fantastic helping us run the Fast Start study, helping me do some market research at the early stages. So just giving people their credit, giving the dues where it's needed before I move to, what's the future.
100%.
Yeah, you don't mind that, yeah? Right now,
by all means, I think that's it's really good, important that you touched on that as well, because the team is what it is, right?
Exactly. I mean, but immediate next steps really is that we're speaking with NHS trusts, and we're trying to get as many as possible who work within the psychosis care framework of the UK, known as the early interventions in psychosis, so EIP. We're trying to work with as many EIP teams as possible on these larger clinical studies, because our proof of concept was done using online methods, and as such relies on self-report data. If we really want to be rigorous, which we need to be to get medical device classification, as Raheem will tell you all about, we will need larger scale clinical research studies. And for that, a couple public funding bids coming up in the summer, trying to get little support from the relevant teams in ongoing conversations with about 6 or 7 different trusts, reaching out to 5 or 6 every single day, just the teams themselves on the ground. So we're trying to get as much as possible support from that perspective. We've got to build out our presence in terms of the community. We need input from lived users, both with lived experience as well as administrative users in the care pathway, to inform our decision-making and our process. So we're looking at launching a PPI, that's a public and patient involvement study as well, just to ensure we have that input on all our research. So I mentioned all about research. I mean, it's research heavy, but we're also going to have to fundraise relatively soon. The amount is dynamic. The nature of it is dynamic, but we're looking to raise likely in the fall. which would allow us to convert essentially full time onto Psyrin. I mean, in effect, we work a lot on this already, but having that nice label is important as well, I believe. So that's the immediate ones. In terms of the dream, I will defer you to Julianna because she really is the resident dream maker. I rein in the vision and make it practical, but she's the one with the lofty vision.
Okay, the lofty vision, changing psychosis care pathway from reactive to proactive all over the world. And we really would like to make it with other severe mental disorders. Also find it important that now the nature of psychiatric assessment and diagnostic system is really subjective. And I think even if we just introduce one marker that's objective, or at least, as I sometimes say, like structurally biased, so it's systematically biased if it's biased, that would be a really big change in the whole kind of psychiatric care overall. So the dream is like making something really preventative, really proactive, and also making something objective from subjective. The dream is, of course, being implemented in US, UK, and in other countries. And I really against psychometric scales and self-report questionnaires. So if we could eliminate them, that would be, it's not a dream that you put in your deck, but that's one of my personal dream deeply. And I want to build a company that really work close with service users and create products that really touched by their experiences and their needs. So actually, if it could be a company that service users praise and service users says like, yeah, Psyrin is behind us, that would be a kind of big dream. I think not many mental health companies doing it, and especially not many startups. So that I would be extremely proud of.
And just to add that the societal impact.
Yeah,
go on.
Yeah,
I was going to say
I was actually going to go to you next, actually. But yeah, by all means.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to add just the societal impact. I mean, if you think about Psyrin as part of a better future for society broadly across the globe, so serious mental illness is associated with poverty, and poverty is associated with serious mental illness as well, for example. And so thinking about how we can impact there, or infrastructure, for example, the NHS is under a huge amount of weight at the moment, and we can alleviate some of that with just this app. Going forward, minorities are at a greater risk of mental ill health. So can we help there? Can we help LGBT people, or especially in psychosis? There's an association with ethnic minorities as well, both a bias for and against diagnoses of psychosis or psychotic disorders. So we're thinking about our impact more broadly than just at the scientific level or at the individual level, which are both super important, and that's the focus of what we do. But by focusing on the individual, we can have a wider societal impact, even things on the justice system, for example. So police get called out to some people with psychosis or have a psychotic disorder. Can we impact there as well? Or what about social services? Is there an impact that can be made there? So really, really broad stroke impact that can be made from something like Psyrin, from the individual and the science all the way through to infrastructure, minorities, poverty, and justice.
I think you just read my mind there, Raheem. In terms of like what I was just going to segue on to was to ask you a similar question to understand, what that large impact would be it in the NHS and the society. You just read my mind there. But yeah, amazingly well put there. I think, Edwin, in terms of how the team has established themselves, what y'all are currently doing, as well as what y'all look to do in the next few months to years, as well as Julianna, in terms of how y'all look forward to going in terms of as a team in terms of the larger impact, as well as Raheem, very well articulated to show what sort of a major impact Psyrin is going to make, not just within the community as the immediate benefit users, but as well as the larger society, as well as society at large. So I think very well put there, Raheem, Edwin, as well as Julie. So thank you for that. And maybe before we wrap up, I'm also conscious of time. So before we wrap up, maybe one last question to each of y'all. So if you were to write a letter to your younger self, say 5 years younger, as well as your older self, say 5 to 10 years older, what would be in that letter? Any takers here?
One of you guys start. I gotta think about this.
I think I know the answer, but do you want to go first, Raheem? I also could appreciate time to think about it.
Well, I mean, if I just go off my yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if I had to just go for it, I think my answer for my younger self would be just go for it. It would be don't hold back, get involved, be yourself. I think 5 years ago, I really wasn't my authentic self. I wasn't involved. I was timid. And I think in those 5 years, I've seen significant growth. And, my only wish is that I had been myself earlier. So I think if I had to write back to myself, it would be don't hide yourself, be yourself, and make change. That would be for me 5 years ago. As for the future, or what I want to write to myself in the future, maybe more about my hopes, dreams on a personal level and a professional level, and also in entrepreneurship. I don't really see myself doing anything but growth from here. And I think that's a really, really nice place to be in. So I hope that that becomes true. And I think it'll be nice to see in 10 years' time me reflect on those hopes and dreams that I have right now and see, how much of it comes true, how much have I surpassed my expectations, and how much more growth there is to do from there. So I think that would be my gut feeling on those letters.
Amazing there, Raheem. I think all the best for your future as well as in terms of, I think, the way you articulated how you would write to yourself in the past. I think that was, good lessons for anyone, regardless of what they're doing. And even that's something even I could use as well. So thank you for that. In terms of, it's very pragmatic and something that anyone could really use. So thank you for sharing that as well. Julie or Edwin?
Happy to go. So I think for the past, I think I would have not changed a lot in my past. I think I did great choices, but if I had to make one advice, would be just coming to the UK and coming to London a little bit earlier, and not be afraid of networking, and not be afraid of talking to people, and not be afraid of talking about your dreams. They might think you silly, but that's fine. And also not limit myself in terms of like the thing that I have served up is good. I can embrace it. I can do things no matter whether I'm afraid or not. I can just do things, and also spend a little bit more time with service users, even more than I had, and also just establish myself as a person a little bit more like I think I'm quite knowing what are my values, and I'm quite integrated, but just even spending more time on figuring out what are the most important things for me in life is something that you can really rely on later on. But otherwise, well done, Julie. And for the future, I think I'm sure that it will work out really well. But one message: just don't be an asshole, and never really forget why you started this thing and what is it for, and be really loyal to your co-founders.
Yeah, again, amazing stuff there, Julian. Very pragmatic. That's things that we take for granted, but that's some things that we really need. Especially, I love your future, the tips that you gave for the future as well, because people tend to change, and I think those are very pragmatic, advice that sometimes some people need to stick it on their wall.
But because the whole startup ecosystem is about being really transactional a little bit, and just thinking big. And then I think if you just put this title or on your, I don't know, diary, that not being a natural is sometimes it can be a little bit challenging, because there is so many advantages sometimes you are, and I think it just but if you lose yourself, that's what's the point, then you lost everything. So yeah, I think it's quite it seems really easy to say, but I think execute on not being a natural is not as easy as it sounds.
Certainly, I think it's important, and a point that we touched on right at the beginning about, just being a good person. That can be like being human at the core of it can make a big difference, not just in terms of building a company or anything like that, but as a whole, in terms of getting to know people and whatnot. Just being a good person in general, it just makes a massive difference. So in terms of how we impact, what sort of impact we leave on others as well.
Yeah, because you make an impact, and if you are a bad person, your impact will be not as good, maybe. So it's well, at least the likelihood that your impact will be good if you are a good person is much higher than otherwise. So yeah. Sorry, Edwin.
No worries. Thanks a lot for that, Julie. Edwin, how about you?
Yeah, sorry, just got a little.
I think you had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, I did. Now I was just sorting out some background noise. I'm sorry. Give me one second.
He's playing for time. That's what's going on here.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, I'm back. Right. Number one, Julie stole my answer for the future. I don't like this. Before I get to you to answer that question, are you going to censor the word asshole out of curiosity?
I don't think so.
No. It's good advice.
No.
Right. Well.
Yeah, it's raw as it is.
True that. Now, answering the past, really.
I'll see. I might bleep it out. Let's see. I need to see. I don't think. No, I think I'll keep it. Yeah, I think I'll keep it. Yeah.
All right. Well, in terms of my answer to the past, I think there's two things I'd say. Number one is, trust the process. Like, just trust that everything will be fine. I think, I wouldn't say the word anxious, but I think certainly I spent a lot of time thinking about what the future held. And worrying about, a career or what that meant, so focused on that, and, manifesting a so-called successful career. So I tell myself to relax, trust the process, don't think too much about a career as an outcome. And the other thing has nothing to do with Psyrin. I tell my younger self to really treasure the time I had with my family, because I think it's a time you spend the most with your family. So 5 years ago, I would be back home a lot more than I am now. Now I get back home once a year, whereas back in those days, 3 or 4 times a year in Singapore was close by. So I would really tell myself to treasure that experience and savor those moments. Now, in terms of the future self, like I said, Julianna stole my answer, but she stole the answer for the second bit. I tell myself to not forget why you started. And I just want to echo those sentiments. I think a lot of times when you're navigating the startup space, there are certain compromises that you have to make. And compromises have been made already. I would say, in terms of understanding narratives, and I can't see that's blurred. What was that?
Start with why, Simon Sinek.
Right, exactly. So you start with why. So I would tell myself in the future, just remember why you started this. I think it's naive to say that you won't have to navigate certain trade-offs and that you won't have to do certain things in order to benefit the greater good. But as long as we keep fundamentally why we're building this business and who we're trying to help, I think we'll be okay. And I know for a fact that having Julie and Raheem at my side will ensure that we keep grounded on that mission, despite the many temptations that lie ahead.
Yeah, I think all three of you, thanks a lot for that, Edwin. I think all three of you are very, very different flavors, but all very valid and very deep answers there. Thanks a lot for sharing. And yeah, thank you so much for your time as well. Really love this, having this conversation. I think I came out of this conversation very much more informed than when I came into this. So thank you for your time. All the best with Psyrin. And where could people find out more about Psyrin? And in terms of your social handles, your websites, where could they find out more about Psyrin? I'll leave all the description links in the description as well.
Please. The best place really right now for updates is LinkedIn. So it's a professional networking site for those who don't know. But Psyrin, Psyrin. If you search us on Google, you should see us as well. We're relatively good SEO wise. But our website is Psyrin, again, Psyrin.co.uk. That's for our website. And again, same thing on LinkedIn. We're probably the first that pops up. You can also find, of course, myself, Julie, and Raheem each on LinkedIn. We're always happy to take messages. Our reply time is pretty good. From best to worst, it's me, Raheem, and then Julie on LinkedIn. But we'll eventually respond.
All right. I think all those links would be in the description as well. So do keep an eye on updates on Psyrin as well. So again, thanks a lot for your time. Keep doing what you're all doing, and really looking forward to those next steps that you outlined as well, Edwin. So
Thanks, Abdur.
Thanks a lot, and have a
thank
lovely
you for
day.
having us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.